fun. You got a lot more people showing up than we do.
They got a better looking teacher.
I'm not going to tell Miss Johnny you said that. All right. Good evening. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad that I'm here. I tell you what, was it four or five nights on a hospital recliner, or there was a nice handy dandy little bench over there that I could sleep on. It was pretty not nice. It's great to be home, be back in our own bed, to be here. We are so glad to be here. Tammy is sort of not the best word. She's in a semi-quarantine state back there, and she's warning me back there. She's still coming down off those high-dose steroids. Kind of feels like she has electricity running through her veins right now. Starting to see some differences in her, the way her foot and leg was feeling was giving her so much trouble. Not there yet. They're going to change her multiple sclerosis medicine, or daily maintenance medicine. They're going to change it to something else here in the coming weeks. But all that to say this, she's doing somewhat better. Not there. She won't be here Sunday. She's got to stay away from people while she's immunocompromised right now, and will be for the next several weeks. But we're kind of rolling the dice getting her out on a Wednesday night. I can only handle being around her alone so much. I need to get her out and around people a little bit. Seems like there was something else. Am I forgetting something? I say I was glad to be here. So, yeah, glad to be here. All right. Tonight, we are back in 2 Samuel. We are in the whole episodic nightmare, that which is the consequences of David's sin with Bathsheba. He is having to face a lot of consequences. Things are bad within his house. His own son has ran him out of the kingdom, out of Jerusalem, and taken the throne for himself, and that son likewise was killed in battle. And that is how chapter 18 ends. Absalom is killed. He brought the battle to David in the Transjordan. He and the army of Israel show up, but David's army is far greater than that. And David's got God on his side, so that's pretty beneficial. And we pick up in chapter 19 after David learns of Absalom's death. And so chapter 19, by and large, is mostly about politics. As some of these chapters are, this is political maneuvering at its maybe at its finest within 2 Samuel. A lot of text, but we'll slow down when we need to. Otherwise, there'll just be some reading going on here. It was told Joab, "Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." And so the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people. For the people heard that day, the king is grieving for his son. The people stole into the city that day as people steal in who are ashamed when they flee in battle. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, "Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." All right, David was grieving in chapter 18. That's how chapter 18 ended. But this is a day of victory, a day of celebration. David was ran out of Israel, right? He's ran out of the throne. He and the people that went with him, they had to leave, cross the Jordan, move into the Transjordan. They're getting out, and some time has passed, and they've been set up. And now, finally, the one who is pursuing him has been dealt with. The army that had pursued them has all fled. David is free again. David can go back to Jerusalem now, right? He can be king again. Everything. This is a day of celebration, a day of victory, and David is mourning his son. Now, there's a lot at play here, right? We got David, who was told at the very beginning by Nathan that there were going to be consequences for his sin with Bathsheba. He was going to have one rise up out of his own household, one who would steal his throne. And this happened. David can see his responsibility in the death of his son. It's part of the consequence of his sin. It's part of the consequence of what he did so long ago with Bathsheba playing out. And so, yes, he's been vindicated. His pursuer has been killed, but David also knows that this whole situation was of his own doing, and he bears responsibility for it. David is mourning his son, not because the son was trying to kill him, but because he knows that he shares responsibility in all that has happened. And so he is grieving. He's grieving his son, sharing blame, taking the fault of what's going on. Verse 5, Joab, which is David's commander, the commander of the army, such as it is that David has with him, Joab came to the house of the king and said, "You have today covered with shame the faces of all your servants, who have this day saved your life and the lives of your sons and your daughters and the lives of your wives and your concubines, because you love those who hate you and hate those who love you. For you have made it clear today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For today I know that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased. And now therefore arise, go out and speak kindly to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go, not a man will stay with you this night. And this will be worse for you than all the evil that's come upon you from your youth until now." I don't know if we call that tough love. Joab is being extremely bold in his approach to King David right here. This is unprecedented, right? Only Nathan has gotten away with such language with David. And this is pretty harsh. And we need to talk about what's taking place here. This will be one of those places we kind of slow down here. Again, this is a day of victory, a day of celebration. And while the king should be joining in and celebrating with his people and joining in all this, he is instead grieving and mourning. And so we have here let me back up to verse 3. The people celebrating, instead, they steal into the city that day as people steal in those who are ashamed when they flee in battle. They've been celebrating, but they find out the king is mourning, and now they're ashamed of themselves for celebrating. And they shouldn't have been. They had rights to celebrate. It was normal. It was typical. They should have been joyous, and all this is over. And instead, they find out the king is mourning, and so they're ashamed of themselves as someone who has fled as a deserter. The battle got tough, and they became scared and ran away, and so now they hang their head in shame, and they go hide in the city. That's what's happening. They're ashamed of themselves because they've celebrated, and they feel like they've done it out of place, except they didn't. The fault is not theirs. The fault is David's. And so Joab has called him out on it. You've covered with shame the faces of your servants. These very people who rescued you and have brought this about, you've brought shame on them. And this is, it kind of enumerates what's happened here. They've saved your life. They saved the lives of your sons. David's still got other sons. He's still got other daughters besides Absalom. He's got more. They've saved them because Absalom would have annihilated them as well. He saved the lives of your wives. He saved the lives of your concubines. In verse 6, Joab just lays it out there. Because you love those who hate you. You love Absalom. Absalom hated you. And you hate those, all of us who've been here with you since the very beginning, watching out for you, taking care of you, fighting on behalf of you. You hate us. That's, again, this is bold. This is bold from Joab. You've made it clear today, as if that wasn't enough, you've made it clear today that we don't mean anything to you. And if you could have chosen, if Absalom lived and we would have died, you would have been happy about it. Bracing. right? It's like something you'd see right off of a movie channel or something. That's pretty strong language from Joab, but this is the proverbial face slap to wake David up, make him aware of what's happening, right? Arise, go out, speak kindly to your servants. That is, get on with life. You need to make this right, because if you do not, in verse 7, if you do not, everybody's going to leave your side. You're going to be here alone because we're going to leave. We're going to see that we don't matter to you. There's no reason for us to stay by your side, to be loyal to you, when we know that you would have preferred your son over all of us. Right? And this is going to be worse for you than all the evil that's come upon you from your youth till now. That is a pretty powerful threat. Joab is the commander of the army, and he could direct everyone away from the city. And so David does really all that he can do at this point. What Joab says is logical. David understands that the repercussions of his actions in the face of this victory could cost him the loyalty of all these people. And so, verse 8, he arose, took a seat at the gate, and it's typically where the king would sit and judge. Right? The people were all told, behold, the king is sitting in the gate. And all the people came before the king. And this verse 8 is supposed to be the, okay, everything is smoothed over now passage. This is the, okay, David quit the mourning thing, and now life can go on. Everything's okay. Let's kind of resume business. It doesn't say anything about the party starting back up again or anything, but David is resuming his duties. The end of verse 8 here could or should have probably been included in verse 9. Israel had fled every man to his own home. That army that Absalom had assembled, right? They are fighting there with him. Absalom's killed. Now they scatter. Their king is dead. And so now they've got to be afraid of David and his armies. The repercussions for having sided with the rebel Absalom.
And when it says Israel, that's the northern tribe?
Now it is. And so we haven't used this language in a while, but we did with Saul and David. David had kind of garnered the support of Judah. He made his kingdom, or his capital, Hebron in Judah, while Saul, Jonathan, Ishbosheth had their kingdom in the northern territories, which we come to call Israel, as kind of the blanket statement. So even now, even during the lifetime of David and his reign, we have some dissension growing between what's going to be the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, Israel and Judah. And so we see that language creeping into the text here. Now, some would argue that 1st and 2nd Samuel were written after the divided monarchy, after Jeroboam and Rehoboam separate the kingdom in 1 Kings. And that language is creeping over into the text here. And the author's writing to a group who is familiar with the divided monarchy. So him using the word Israel as a blanket term to describe the northern kingdom has become the norm by now. So yes, we're going to see some of the beginnings of that in this chapter, and especially in chapter 20 as well. So all the people were arguing throughout all the tribes of Israel. Keep in mind, when he says Israel here, he's talking about northern kingdom still. It's still in that ballpark. He's talking about the tribes that were associated with Saul and his reign. So all the people were arguing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, the king delivered us from the hands of our enemies, saved us from the hands of the Philistines. They're making arguments for David, right? But this is old David. This is the young David. He slayed Goliath. He went in all those raids fighting the Philistines. And, that David has rescued them from Edom. He's done all these great things, and they're recalling all his exploits from the past, right? They're making an argument for David to come back and be king. Now he has fled out of the land from Absalom. But Absalom, whom, we're going to see the responsibility, but whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. They acknowledge the good thing that David had done. They acknowledge the thing that they did that caused him to have to flee. Now, therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? This is political, right? It's kind of hard. It's not kind of, it's our fault he had to flee. And if we want things to be good with us, we should probably reach out to him and welcome him back so this doesn't result in what we would call a civil war. We don't want Israel warring against Judah. We don't want things like that happening. If we're going to have this peaceful transition, David coming back to Jerusalem to reign over us, we need to extend an olive branch, so to speak. King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar the priest. Say to the elders of Judah. Now, Judah, southern kingdom. Again, this language sort of betrays a later writing, a writing after the divided monarchy. Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house when the word of all Israel has come to the king? David acknowledging that Israel's reached out to him, but his own people have not reached out to him to bring him back. You are my brothers. This is David's argument to them. You are my bone and my flesh. I'm one of you guys. You're my family. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, it says the general of Absalom's army. We go back and find out who he is. He's Absalom's general, one that fled after Absalom was killed in battle. Say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? God do so to me and more also if you are not commander of my army from now on in place of Joab. Political maneuvering. David is making concessions. I want to make some of you guys who, you voted me out of office, so to speak, in anointing Absalom king. I'm going to take some of you guys and bring you into my inner circle. Right? He's creating some creating some harmony between the two, making inroads, bringing the parties together, if you will. I'm going to bring you in and make you general in place of Joab. Now, Joab is going to remain a commander, but he's going to command the elite group of men, the Kerethites and the Pelethites, those mighty men of valor that David is associated with. Joab is not being asked to step down or out of an important role. They're just changing titles, or what they're doing here. In verse 14, he swayed the heart of all the men of Judah as one man, so that they sent word to the king, return, both you and all your servants. And so the king came back to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king, to bring the king over the Jordan. So Judah, we want you come back. In fact, they go out to meet him, to bring him back to Jerusalem, which is going to create a little problem as well by the end of the chapter. But they got to make the trip first. David's going to make it back to the Jordan, get close to it, and then things start happening. Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Bahurim, hurried to come down with the men of Judah to meet King David. And with him were 1,000 men from Benjamin. Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, his 15 sons, and his 20 servants rushed down to the Jordan before the king. Do you remember who Shimei was, the son of Gera? David was leaving Jerusalem, fleeing from Absalom. The guy that was going out beside him, throwing rocks at him and cussing him out as he went and all that. You remember that guy? Here he is. All right? Here he is. Ziba was a servant of Mephibosheth. Came and brought the donkey load of goods to David and his people to help give them some supplies, showing his loyalty to David as he traveled. We got them going there. We got men from Benjamin. We got people showing up to welcome back the king. They crossed the ford. The ford's of the Jordan right there in Jericho. They crossed the ford to bring over the king's household and to do his pleasure. And Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan, said to the king, let not my lord hold me guilty, or remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. Do not let the king take it to heart, for your servant knows that I've sinned. Therefore, behold, I've come this day, the first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king. Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered. That's Joab's brother. Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered, shall not Shimei be put to death for this? Because he cursed the Lord's anointed. So we got the guy, right? That's Shimei. He worked David over the coals as they travel along. And even back then, Shimei wanted to kill the dog. He called him a dog. Kill that dog. You know, and talking to you like this kind of thing. And here he is. He wants to do it now too. Let's kill this guy. Let's just get him out of here. He deserves death for his betrayal, right? You see what happened? Shimei being proactive, right? Sometimes children are smart enough to do that. They know they're in trouble with mom and dad, come running to them and try to avert the trouble before it turns into something super serious. I did this at school today and I got in trouble. Yeah, okay. Well, sort of the same idea. If he runs to David now, perhaps David will show him mercy. David said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? Now he's speaking to Abishai now. That you should this day be as an adversary to me. Shall anyone be put to death in Israel this day? Rhetorical question, which the answer was no. For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel? David acknowledging his place over Israel, Shimei being part of that. He's going to let him walk. King said to Shimei, you shall not die. The king gave him his oath. So he showed him mercy, gave him a pardon, gave him his leave, right? He's going to let him. He got away with one. That's what it amounts to. He got away with one. And we have Mephibosheth. This is the grandson of Saul, son of Jonathan. Mephibosheth, who was fallen on when they were fleeing. He was a baby and got him lame in his feet, legs, right? David has taken care of him, invited him in to eat at his own table, that kind of thing, took care of him. But Ziba, Mephibosheth's servant, caught David on the way out of town with that donkey load of goods and told him that Mephibosheth had stayed behind because he was trying to make a run to the throne. He wanted to become king again, as was his right as the offspring of Saul, of the house of Saul. And so David removed all the blessing that he'd given Mephibosheth and gave it all to the servant Ziba. But now we have Mephibosheth coming back into the picture. Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king. He had neither taken care of his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he came back in safety. So Mephibosheth, and what the author is conveying to us is Mephibosheth had the look of a man that was in mourning. He hadn't been cutting his hair. He hadn't been clipping his toenails. He's not washing his feet. He's not washing his clothes. This guy reeked, right? He is too devastated, too grieved to be bothered with personal hygiene, right? And that was just the normal display of grieving and mourning at the time. So this is kind of equivalent to sitting in sackcloth and ashes, kind of an idea. This is Mephibosheth showing a contrite heart before King David. When he came to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? He answered, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me. All right? He's pointing the finger back at Ziba now. My servant deceived me, for your servant said to him, Mephibosheth, this is what I told Ziba, I'll saddle a donkey for myself that I may ride on it and go with the king, for your servant is lame. Mephibosheth saying, I wanted to go with you, and I was going to saddle a donkey, and I was going to come on. But he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like the angel of God. Do therefore what seems good to you. For all my father's house were but men doomed to death before my lord the king. But you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I then to cry to the king? Ziba lied. You're like an angel of God. You're like a messenger from God. You do what's right with you. You've already treated me far better than I deserve, because all the rest of Saul's household, they're doomed to die. but you taking care of me and set me at your table, I have no rights. I have no right to cry to the king. He's not going to whine, not complaining to the king about the circumstance. You were misled. Here I am. Do what you wish. He's throwing himself at the mercy of the courts, as it were. The king said to him, why speak any more of your affairs? I have decided. You and Ziba shall divide the land. Mephibosheth said to the king, oh, let him take it all, since my lord the king has come safely home. So that's, I think, fairly telling. I don't want to make too many assumptions here, but it would seem, because Mephibosheth seems to not care at all about the land that David had given him. He'd given him Saul's portion of land. He'd given him servants to work the land, to get the produce and the proceeds from it, so Mephibosheth could grow wealth and all that. He took that away from him and gave it to Ziba. And now he's offering half of it back, and Mephibosheth is like, doesn't matter, as long as you're home safely, that's all that matters. So it kind of bodes well for him. It makes us think pretty well of Mephibosheth. Perhaps he wasn't lying. David, since he's willing to split the land, he's more, I don't know which one I'm telling the truth kind of situation. I don't know if Ziba lied to me or if Mephibosheth's lying to me right now. We'll just do what? I'll split it, and they'll both be taken care of, kind of a thing. So either which way, he shows Mephibosheth both grace and mercy. And Mephibosheth seems to be more than tickled that David is just back, being king again. Perhaps Mephibosheth will be able to sit at his table once more. And now Barzillai the Gileadite had come down from Rogelim, and he went on with the king to Jordan to escort him over the Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man. He was 80 years old. He had provided the king with food while he stayed at Mahanaim. And he was a very wealthy man. So we got the 80-year-old Barzillai. He's a wealthy guy, and he is taking care of David. Now he's come down to see him, to be with him as he crosses his triumphant return, right? Back to the throne. The king said to Barzillai, come over with me, and I'll provide for you with me in Jerusalem. Come be with me. I'll take care of you. You took care of me. I'm going to take care of you. You come to Jerusalem, and I'm going to care for you. The author already told us that Barzillai is a wealthy man. He probably isn't in need for much of anything, but being elevated to the status of one of the king's guys, that's in the king's circle, being cared for by the king, that would be a status thing. Verse 34, Barzillai said to the king, how many years have I still to live that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? Barzillai acknowledging his age, it's just not, it's not my thing. I am this day 80 years old. Can I discern what is pleasant, what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats or what he drinks? Can I still listen to the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please let your servant return that I may die in my own city near the grave of my father and my mother. All right, let's pause right there and back up a slide. So Barzillai is acknowledging his age. I can't tell what is pleasant, what is not. Yeah, it'd be great to be right there with you, but I can't even tell what's good and what's not anymore, if it's pleasant, if it's not. I can't taste what's good and what's bad when I drink it or eat it. I can't tell if it's good, if it's bad. I can't hear anymore to listen to the voice of singing men. Why should I go and be a burden? I can't do anything. So it's sort of comical, but when you're reading it, you can kind of tell, it sounds like he might be up to something. He got something in mind here. And he does. In verse 37, we could probably understand where he's coming from. Verse 37, please let your servant return that I may die in my own city, near the grave of my father and mother. It's an honorable thing, right? I just want to go home. I want to go back to my home. I want to die there. We'd say, amen. Sounds good. But here's an option. Here's something if you want to honor me and do something for me, well, here's Kimham. Let him go over with my lord the king. Do whatever for him seems good to you. Take my blessing and give it to him. Now, at this point, we don't know who this is. Maybe it's a son. Maybe it's a grandson. Maybe it's a great-grandson. But somebody that's significant to Barzillai that he sees some benefit if David would bless him. Right? And the king answered, Kimham shall go over with me, and I will do for him whatever seems good to you. And all that you desire of me, I will do for you. David's he is a politician. Now, he is a warrior, right? We know from the Psalms that he is a poet. He is a shepherd boy at heart. David is a multifaceted guy, but he is a politician. He's showing kindness, he's showing grace, he's showing mercy to these people. But at the end of the day, he's got to get nations willing to allow him to be king, to allow him to rule over them. So as he's forgiving people coming to him, he's going to make it easier for Israel and those people who have rebelled against him to say, all right, he's not annihilating the people who turned against him and rebelled. And if he didn't kill Shammai, maybe he'll let me slide too. So David is doing some good things, but they are things that are going to help him reconcile the people of Israel and Judah. And then all the people went over the Jordan, and the king went over, and the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own home. The king went on to Gilgal, and Kimham went on with him. All the people of Judah, southern kingdom, Judah, and also half, we got all of Judah, half of Israel, brought the king on his way. Our author might be partial. Let's see. Then all the men of Israel came to the king and said to the king, why have our brothers, the men of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household over the Jordan and all David's men with him? Here's where the politics start. This would have fit well into chapter 20, but it'll get us kind of in a mindset to study chapter 20 next week. This is political maneuvering right here. Why have the men of Judah, this is Israel talking, why have the men of Judah stolen you and brought you across? They went and met him at the Jordan, and they're bringing him into Jerusalem, right? And all the men of Judah answered. Got Israel speaking, now we have Judah speaking. All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, because the king is our close relative. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we eaten at all the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? And so you have Israel making this argument. Now, we should have been in on this. Judah, well, he's our flesh and blood. He's a relative of us. And then they sort of start throwing up back stuff. We eating at the king's expense. David taking care of many of the people of Israel. Has he given us any gift, as David kind of did when he started going in and defeating the Philistines, and he was sending goods throughout Judah and into Israel to try to win people's favor, right? So the men of Israel answered. Verse 3, the men of Israel answered the men of Judah. We have 10 shares in the king, and in David also we have more than you. Why then did you... We're more invested in King David than you are. So, okay, you may be flesh and blood, but we've got more invested in him. Why then did you despise us? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? This is kind of funny because they did anoint Absalom over David. It's sort of a funny... It's funny, but you see it in politics, right? It's funny yet sad. Oh, we were more invested in King David than you are. Now forget that just a moment ago we booted him out and anointed another guy in his place, right? Forget that part. Why didn't you invite us to come to the party and bring the king back into Jerusalem? The language, were we not the first to speak? And they were. Israel reached out to David before Judah did. They reached out about bringing him back first. And the language, were we not the first to speak of bringing back our King. Right? That's great. Our King. The words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. So evidently Judah kind of won that first verbal sparring match, but what you have Israel who turned against David, anointed Absalom king, ran David out of Jerusalem. He had to live in the Transjordan for a while. And now Israel is afraid that when David gets back on the throne, he's going to show Judah more favor. They're going to get all the good things, and Israel is going to be kind of left out in the cold. We're looking at one guy sitting on the throne and a two-party system, right? This is not a good thing that's happening right here. So we have the beginning of division that we're going to see play out, well, with Solomon's son, Rehoboam. So that's where this chapter is going to end. You have the Israel, the northern kingdom, angry with Judah, the southern kingdom, and vice versa. David is going to be stuck in the middle on the throne at Jerusalem. But the main point being, David is back to Jerusalem and on the throne. But problems are cropping up, and there's going to be a rebellion in chapter 20. And that is where these last few verses get us. The rebellion is a-coming. And so that's where we'll be next week. Any thoughts or questions that you have about this chapter? It is mostly political maneuvering, doing the right things in right ways to have a smooth transition back to Jerusalem amongst all those who rebelled against David, and David ensuring them that, I'm not going to retaliate, come wipe all you guys out because you came and fought against us, kind of a deal. But that is the gist of it.
They made a big to-do about bringing David across the Jordan, didn't they?
They did.
They mentioned that a lot.
And that's sort of, and that it's the pomp and circumstance, it's the parade of bringing the king back in. But Israel didn't want to be, they didn't want to be looked at as that the people that were still pulling away from David. I mean, they were the ones that anointed Absalom king, but they also wanted to be there to bring him back. They're trying to gain favor with David. And so this whole parade coming back to Jerusalem and Israel being left out of it, it just, it makes for bad press in the Jerusalem paper, right? And all the little Twitter feeds and such that are going out back then. So it's bad. It's bad publicity for Israel, and a great fear that David is going to show favoritism to Judah, which would be probably legitimate fear, were it not King David. So you have David mourning over Absalom, which forces Joab to react, kind of snap David out of it. Says some harsh things to him, harsh but true. It sort of gets David back on the path to getting his head right, to come back to Jerusalem. And the trip back to Jerusalem is David ironing out some of those rough patches between people who treated him badly. And all that, again, and this kind of reveals the heart of David, but it also shows his political savvy. Because the things that he did, while they're godly things, showing mercy and forgiveness, they are also things that kind of smooth the path back to the throne in Jerusalem. And all that falling under the umbrella of consequences of sin. Consequences of sin. All right, we'll be in chapter 20 next week. Looking forward to it.
study a portion of our word and glorify you. Father, we thank you for all the physical blessings that you give us. Help us to be good stewards of these blessings and let people know that every good thing comes from you, and without you we would be nothing. Father, we thank you for the spiritual blessing of your Son, Jesus, who came to this earth and lived and died and set an example so that we might have the hope of eternal life. Father, we ask that you go with us now as we depart. May we do the things that glorify you. We've been found faithful